Welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to kind of do something a little bit fun. So instead of doing a whole drawing of an isometric and breaking out those three views, I'm going to do something that I do in a few videos every now and then on my channel, and this is one of them that I like to do. What I'm going to actually create is an isometric drawing. So what you're seeing right here is a isometric, but this one was done in 2D, and I actually did the dimensioning off of that, and I'll show that in a separate video as well. But in this one, we're going to do something quite interesting. All right, so I'm just going to jump over to AutoCAD, and I'm going to show you what I created, and then I'll show you how to create it. Okay, so here in AutoCAD, this is what we're going to actually create in this video. And you can see that this is a actual 3D model. And if I jump back to the model view, you should see the drawing or the model that I created, right? And here it is. Let's go ahead and kind of hide this just so you can see it. I'm going to use the hide command. So this is actually a true three-dimensional part, right? And now I'm going to have to put these dimensions on here. Now we'll show you how to put these dimensions on. You will see one other thing here is that these are dual dimension, basically meaning that I have the millimeter equivalent on top, and then I have the inches on the bottom of it. So I'm going to show you how to do all of that stuff, and you can see kind of the behind the curtain here is that in the layout tab here, you're actually seeing the drawing. And remember that we can control how this thing view, and we're going to get into all of this stuff, and yours will actually show up here, but I can go ahead and tell it, how do I want this to look in reference to my drawing. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over and create this. And like I said, I really enjoy doing these type of videos because these are kind of fun and it's kind of different, and you never know what you might have to create in your drafting career. One benefit of this is that this is something that Inventor, SolidWorks, and far as I know, most of your 3D programs cannot do. So here's one of those checks for AutoCAD. All right, so all I'm going to do is just click on the plus here. That's going to start a new drawing. And while I'm doing this part, I just want to go ahead and say thank you for subscribing and tuning into this video, as I really enjoy, as you can hear from my voice, making these type of videos. Okay. The first thing I did, and if you haven't noticed it by now, is that my ribbon is different. I'm using the 3D modeling ribbon. So if yours is set on the 2D annotation and you want to kind of follow along the way I'm doing it, that's the one that I have first. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and turn off this grid. I very rarely ever worked with the grid. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my, running O-snaps. That's the one I wanted you to see. And these are going to be my typical O-snaps that you're going to see me use throughout this video. All right, this is going to be super duper easy and simple to make. Probably one of your easiest 3D models that you're going to ever create. We're going to start off by creating a rectangle. I'll go ahead and click a start point, and then I'll just tell it the dimensions of the other area. So it's going to be 100, 60. All right, let's zoom out. Let's go ahead and do an offset. So I'll use the offset command. Give it a distance of 2.5. And then I'll just offset this to the inside. All right, so now we got most of our work is done. The last thing I need to do is I'm going to create a polyline here. So I'm just going to go to the polyline command. I'm going to click here. That's my first point. I'll go this direction. Let's go ahead and turn that ortho on, just so I'm doing straight lines. I'm going to go this direction, a distance of 20. Then I'll go up a distance of 20. And then I'll type in C to close it. Okay. Now I need to move this into position. I think I'll just use grips for that. So go ahead and highlight your part here. Go ahead and select this square at the bottom and hit the space bar one time. And then just place it right on this endpoint. All right. Now I'm ready to start doing some, normal stuff that we're doing. So far, everything that I've done so far is just regular 2D drafting stuff, right? All right. So next I'm going to use the mirror command. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to look up here and see where the mirror command is actually hiding from me. It's going to be located here. And then I'm going to select this object here, hit enter, go from this midpoint up to this midpoint. Go ahead and hit enter to that. Then I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to go back to the mirror command, And remember, that's located underneath the modify and the one that looks like a little TP. Go ahead and go from that midpoint to that midpoint and then hit enter. Okay, so this is all I need to create this three-dimensional shape, right? Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put this in an isometric view so it rotates it sideways. And then while I'm here, let me go ahead and change the way this thing is going to look just for one split second, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select here, and then I'm going to go to shades of gray. We don't have anything to shade yet, but I'm going to go to the extrusion command. I'll go here and select that, come down a distance of 10. All right. Then the next thing I need to do is figure out how far to send this little offset part down into. So I'm just going to go back to the extrude command. And sometimes this may get a little hard to select is that inside rectangle. So make sure that you're getting just that inside rectangle. And you can see sometimes if you lose it, just kind of come off the picture. And if it really starts to cause you a major problem, you can always hit escape, come back to here, and then just put it on wireframe. And then go to the extrude command. And then you should be able to select that line rather easily. Either one of those methods will work. Enter, come down. We're going to have to do a little subtraction. So remember that the bottom thickness of this is 2.5. So I'm going to subtract 10 minus 2.5. And that should give me 7.5. Okay. Let's go ahead and choose the subtract function here. So we're going to go to subtract. Now I'm looking for my little Boolean operations. It's going to be located here. We're going to select the object I want to keep first, which is here. Enter. And then the object I want to subtract is going to be this inside. And then I'll go to enter. All right. Let me go ahead and take a look back to this at the shades of gray. And now we can kind of see that we are creating this shape. All right. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and select each one of these little, I guess they're kind of triangles. Let me go ahead and kind of do this a little bit faster. I'm going to select those. So you see I have all four of those objects. I'm just going to use the move command. I'll go from this endpoint down to that endpoint. Okay. Now hopefully I didn't miss the endpoint that I was going to because I don't see it showing up. Let me go back to the wireframe real quick. Yeah, it does look like I went to the bottom one. No, that looks correct to me. Okay. And I'll see here in a second anyway. Let's go ahead and go back to the shades of gray. Shades of gray. Okay. Which is kind of weird because I'm used to seeing that there. Let me go ahead and undo that and put it back to where I know it's going to be there. Let's go ahead and use the undo function, which is located here. I'm just going to kind of undo back a couple more until I get back to when those triangles were sitting right on top. Okay. I might have to zoom in just to make sure I get these right. So I'm just going to go ahead and select them again. And once again, I'll do this kind of quickly. Let's go ahead and zoom into here. So I'll go to move. Let me zoom into here, and then I'll grab that endpoint and place it on that endpoint. Okay, that looks a lot better. Let's go ahead and extrude these. So I'm going to go to extrude, and I'll do the exact same thing I did here before. It's by selecting all of those triangles. Enter. I'm going to go up, and the distance of here should be 22.5. Okay. Now here you're at a kind of interesting point of this drawing. It really doesn't give us any instructions if these are connected together or if each one of these little blocks here at the top are individual. So that's going to be totally up to you. If you were doing this for any kind of production, I'm assuming that you would know that those would probably be welded to it or whatever you're fabricating. So you would know a lot more information. But for us, we can leave it at this point because this is all the knowledge that we know of right now. Okay, so now we're at the fun part here. Let me go ahead and rotate this around. So this is the true isometric view of this, right? There's the front side, right side, and top side. Okay? Before I do anything, I have to figure out what's the scale factor is happening here. So I'm just going to jump over to the layout tab. Okay, let me zoom out a hair. Use the rectangle command again. I'm going to go from the lower left, so I'm just going to type in 0, 0, enter. And then I'll put in 11, 8.5. All right, next thing I'm going to do is offset a distance of 0.25. And then let's offset this to the inside. Okay, then I'm going to grab this viewport here, which is going to be the one that's around my shape. And I'm just going to place that endpoint right at that endpoint. And then I'll place this endpoint at this endpoint. Okay. This outside rectangle or square, we really don't need it, but I'm going to keep it here for right now. Let's go ahead and set up the page. So I'm just going to do a right click here on layout 1. Go to page setup manager. It should bring us up a dialog box. Let's go ahead and hit modify. DWG to PDF. And you've seen me do this a million times, so this is kind of normal. We're going to use a ANSI full bleed A size 11 by 8.5. I'm just going to tell it that I'm going to do the extents in our case. We're going to center it. And then let's just go ahead and put it on monochrome just in case we do decide to print this. Go ahead and hit OK. And then close. All right, so here's the view of what I have going on in the model tab, right? So let's go ahead and double click on the inside of this viewport. You can see that it is bolded. I can pan or move my shape around, all right? I can change the way this thing looks as if I go here. And then it says, you know, sketchy is what you saw me show the other one. So if you want to view it in any of these other ones, you can do that. I'm just going to leave it at the hidden right now. And let's see, one other thing we need to do is figure out what the scale factor is going to be. Now this is super simple to do here in the layout tab, is that you see here at the bottom, we have these numbers. I'm going to select the fly up. And then we can kind of play around with some of these numbers. I can look at a 1 to 10 and say, okay, that's a little bit too big. And then we're going to go down in this list to give us a little bit more room. 1 to 16 looks great for me. I'm happy with that. My kind of picture is centered where I want it to be. You can always hit this little lock button here, and then that's just going to stop you from screwing with your scale factor or even the positioning of where this is located. So once you have that set up and you locked it, double click back here on the outside, and then we're going to jump over or jump back to the modeling tab. Okay? Remember that our scale factor is set to 16. Let's go ahead and take a look at the dimension styles. I'm just going to type in D, enter. It should bring open a dialog box. Let's go to modify. Okay, and once we bring it over to modify, we're going to go to the alternate scales. We want this one to display inches underneath it. Remember, this is drawn in millimeters. So I'm going to click here where it says display alternate units. Okay. Do I want it to suppress the trailing zeros or not? That's going to be kind of up to you. But anytime I'm using my alternate dimensions, they're usually not a 1-to-1 conversion. Okay. But I want this to set up as decimal, 2 decimal places. And now I'm going to change this number. Remember that I discussed in a previous video, or if you kind of understand anything about converting millimeters to inches, you'll know that 25.4 is a magic number, right? But what we need this to be is actually 1 divided by 25.4. Well, AutoCAD doesn't take that quite well, so what I usually do is type in 10 divided by 254. That's the exact same thing as dividing it by the other number, right? Let's go over here to the primary units tab. All right, now these are going to be nice whole numbers, so I will go ahead and suppress those trailing zeros. So that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. And then I'll go ahead and leave it at a precision of 4 decimal places. That should be fine for what we need to do. Oh, one other thing I need to do on my alternate units is go ahead and place them below it. Okay, let's keep walking down here. Let's go to the Fit tab. We do know our scale factor, which is 16 in our case. Underneath the text, let's go ahead and make our text a little bit small. Now, if I am confusing you, I am using some regular units that we use here, are the imperial kind of equivalents to it, but it's going to all work out to be the same here in the end. So I'll put it at 0.125. Another interesting number that you should be looking at here is underneath the text is this offset from line. This actually controls that gap in between here. And what you're going to see, if I put this number at, let's see, 0.01 and go ahead and hit enter, you're going to see that that gap between here actually decreases. So if that gap is a little too close for you, we can also go ahead and make it 0.2 and gives us a little bit more room between them, right? So let's go ahead and leave it at 0.02, which is fine. Underneath our lines, symbols and arrowheads tab here, we're going to go ahead and turn off those center marks since we don't need them. So I'm just going to select here to be none. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else in this dialog box? I think everything is fine here. And I also think everything should be fine underneath the lines tab. Okay, everything else looks great. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And then let's hit close. Okay, now we're at the secret sauce of actually creating this. The first thing I need to do is I need to put my UCS on this face. There are multiple ways of doing it. You have a bunch of different ways of, we can just do it by selecting, hey, go ahead and select this face here. And then if I come to this face when it highlights, if that's what I like, do a left click on it. And then you can say, hey, accept it the way it is. You could flip it on the X axis or on the Y axis or whatever you want to do on that notion. But keep in mind the way your UCS looks, right, before you do it. And this is actually quite fine for what I need. All right. So I'm going to do my dimension on this one. Let's go ahead and jump over to the annotation tab here. And then I'll just use a regular linear dimension. And I'll go from that endpoint over to this endpoint. And then I'll come straight down. Okay. Let's keep doing this a little bit more. So I'll go a dimension from, and let me zoom into this a little bit, from this endpoint to that endpoint. I'm going to bring this one straight down. Okay. I'll use the continue option just to keep going to the next one. So I'll go to continue. I'll come to here. And this is where it does get a little bit difficult to kind of process those in there through that. All right. If you want, I'll add another one here. And then I'll escape out of here. Now I'm going to put my thickness, or however wide that is, on this outside one here. So I'll just go back to linear. I'll select this inside here to that outside one. And then I'm just going to bring this one down to that endpoint. Okay, so that's nice and simple for us. Let's go ahead and take a look at doing on this face. Now, instead of using the other way that I used before with the face, let's go ahead and go back to home. The one I usually prefer to use, and this is kind of the old school method of using this, is the 3-point. So if I use a 3-point, it says first select the origin, which the origin is going to be, let me zoom in here, at this endpoint here. And then it says, which direction do you want your X to go? Well, I want my X to go to that endpoint. And then say, which way do you want your Y to go? My Y goes to this endpoint. And if you know anything about the right-hand rule, it will define the Z-axis based on the right-hand rule. Okay? Let's go ahead and put another dimension. Let's jump back to the annotation tab. Let's go a linear from that endpoint over to this endpoint. It looks like I actually missed the endpoint. No, I didn't. Okay. Yeah, something doesn't look right there. Let's go ahead and check it. It looks like let me go ahead and hit escape real quick. Trying to figure out why that one is actually a little bit further than what it needs to be. And it does look like it is. Let me go ahead and go back to that one real quick. So I'm just going to delete that dimension. And we'll come back and place that one on here in a little bit. So let's go to linear. Endpoint here to that endpoint. I'll go ahead and place this dimension. Next, I'll go back to the linear. We're going to choose that endpoint to here. I'll come down and place it here. Oh, looks like I missed it. Let's escape out of here. Select this dimension, going from that endpoint to that endpoint. Looks like it's actually kind of jumping it down, doesn't it? Yeah, for some strange reason, it's not acting like it wants to tag that in the right location. Let's just go ahead and get it close enough for today. Yeah, it seems like my computer is kind of doing some weird stuff today, but we will power through it. Okay, that's good enough for me for right now. Let me go ahead and choose the continue option here. It should remember my last point here, so I'm just going to go to... I see what I did actually wrong. I'll go to that endpoint. I'll fly to this endpoint here at the top. And then I'll go to this endpoint here at the bottom. Okay. Let's go ahead and delete this one. That one actually should go from this endpoint here to that endpoint. Okay. All right, so this guy here on the end here, let's go ahead and select him. It should have a grip here. And then if I tell it to, let's see, move with a leader, I think that should give me the freedom that I need. Let's go ahead and turn ortho off. It's just kind of throwing me off. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and put the other dimension on over here. Let's go back to a linear dimension. We will go from this endpoint to this endpoint. And these are one of those, or some of these tricks that you will learn. You can see that how I selected those dimensions, it will kick it out to the top. Let me escape out of that and do it the preferred way here. I'll go from this endpoint to that endpoint, and that'll kick it down at the bottom. Okay? And then I'll go from, let's see, that endpoint here, all the way to the top of here. And once again, we can move this if this is something that you would like to do. Remember that we can select it here, hover on the grip. Once it gives you the options, choose to move with a leader, and then just flip it to the other side. Okay? All right, let me jump back on this one and go ahead and fix that long dimension that we did have there at the bottom. Let's go ahead and choose the 3-point again. I'll choose the origin. Boy, I'm getting tongue-tied today. At that location, the origin, I'll choose that endpoint, and then we're going to go up and choose that endpoint. And then we'll choose the linear dimension. Remember, the shortcut for that is DLI. If you don't want to switch back and forth between tabs, I'll go from that endpoint to this endpoint. And those two should meet together. Okay. Just kind of looking around here. I do have something kind of weird happening here. Where's this dimension actually pointing to? Okay. And I'm looking between, let's see, that goes to there and that goes to there. Okay. Let's see. It's kind of bothering me now, so I'll go ahead and clean that up here in a second. Okay. Let's go ahead and kind of finish a lot of these, and hopefully by now you're actually understanding the concept of how to create, these type of drawings. They should be quite simple. The major rule to understand is that make sure that you place your UCS in the right location. That's going to be your important factor of determining exactly where, and I do see where it made a mistake at, or how your dimensions will react. Let's go ahead and get rid of this dimension here. We do have a dimension in between here, and that's the one that is actually missing. go ahead and place it right here. Okay. Now these dimensions are kind of looking a lot better than they did before. Okay. I am missing one more dimension here to the outside. Okay, that looks a lot cleaner and a lot better. All right, our final dimension that we need to place here is basically telling it how far it is or the depth down here to the bottom. And we're just going to simply do that by placing a dimension along this back face here. All right, so the same principles can apply. If I choose this 3-point here, I can go from this endpoint, and then I can go to that midpoint and somewhere up along that endpoint should be fine. We'll go ahead and place another dimension from this endpoint to here. Let's go ahead and place that dimension. And then we'll go ahead and move this up. All right. So, looks quite neat. Let's go ahead and take a look back in the Layout tab and see how this looks. All right. And you can see that I do need to pan this up a little bit, or, kind of move it around. So I will double click here. I'm going to unlock it, and I'm just going to use the pan. Try your best not to scroll, or make sure that this number stays 16. Then I will lock it again. And then you can play with the view how you want this to look. So remember that it will print out whatever view that you place this as. So if you do like something to look like this in a sketchy look, by all means, go ahead and do that, right? So this should hopefully conclude another one of these videos. Remember that this is a huge advantage that you have over any of your other 3D programs, is that, far as I'm concerned, or far as I know, is that AutoCAD is the one that typically can do this. Now you see that it does take a little bit of work, but this drawing accurately depicts what you want to happen if you're creating a drawing with 3-dimensional views. This shows everything that you need. And you probably would be able to give this to some fabricator, and he should be able to produce this. So sometimes an isometric is a nice simple drawing, but usually they're used for pictorials. And in the rare occasion that you do want to dimension them, this is how you would do it. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. Hopefully this showed you something else about AutoCAD that you may have not have done, or you may have saw me done this before in a previous video. But thank you for watching as always, and keep drafting until I see you in the next video.